Welcome to Making Video Games with Python Lesson 29. In this video, we're going to conclude Delta Fighter by adding a start screen and creating some interactive menus. So let's get to it. So let me start off by going to the folder and show you a couple things that we have. So similar to like the game over, we have some images for, a button that the person will be able to click on to figure out how to play. And then also a different colored version in order to make the menu interactive so that when they hover over the blue, it turns to red, letting them know that they're on this menu item. What else do we have available to us? We should have a logo. I mean, you can see here we have the ones for the play, we have ones for story, we got Delta Fighter the title, and we have one image to serve as kind of like the story that's going to pop up when the person clicks on the story button. All right, so let's go over to our game, which is this one. And we've already loaded up a bunch of images, one for the title, one for the story button. And you'll notice that we've also created additional variables for the same image, but we've called it off and on, because you're going to see that there's a little technique we use where we're going to replace the image that's in this variable with one of these two. And you'll see that that same thing also happens with the how to and the play. We added a variable for that story text, the one that kind of tells you the story behind Delta Fighter. And we've also loaded up some music that we can play in our start screen and some sound effects, again, to make the menus interactive. All right, so let's kind of get started with our start screen. Let's create a comment that simply just signals that this is the start screen. Let's borrow a little code from our level 1. And also notice that prior to level 1, because we're adding another game loop, we're going to need to put this game over equals false, because there's going to be an if statement in here that's going to get us out of the start screen by ending the game in this loop. So again, just remember that this is a technique when you use multiple basic game loops that you have to set it equal to false prior to entering, because the previous basic game loop set it to false. All right. So having done all of that, we are now ready. And let's draw a couple things. So let's do title.draw. Let's do hero.draw. And I think I have this over here. Just so you're not watching me type. Again, not for simple stuff like this. So let's just tap this in, tap this in, tap this in, tap this in, tap this in. Now the other thing I also want to have is the bullet that we used for level 2. I want that to serve as our pointer in the game. So wherever the mouse goes, that bullet's going to go. Again, it's just going to be a nice effect to have. Now before we can move that bullet, we're going to have to go back up here. And where'd it go? Where's the bullet? Bullet's right here. So notice we set the bullet not visible, so that way when level 2 starts, we don't see the bullet. But because we want to use the bullet as our pointer for our start screen, we're going to need to make it visible. Now at the same time, because we've made it visible now, you're going to want to go to level 2 and just make sure that the bullet's not visible prior to level 2. So again, notice there's adjustments that happen in a game when you start adding new things. So it's very important that you're constantly testing and making sure that something you might introduce in one part of the game doesn't affect another one. So let's see. Do we have enough to? I think we have enough to see. All right, so let's check it out. Let's see where we're at. Okay, so you can see here. Here's the the bullet following the mouse. And the first thing we want to do is we want to make these menus interactive. So we want to be able to switch play to that red version of it when we actually hover over it. All right, so if we go to the game library and we scroll down to the image class, you may have encountered this function called setImage. Now, by default, when an image is created, it's kind of meant to stay with that image. But there is the possibility or the situation where you're going to want to switch the image that a variable is first created with. And that's exactly what setImage does. It will change the image of that particular variable to some other image that we've loaded up. And that's the purpose for these other two variables, because these are those other images we want to use, and we simply want to modify this. Again, it might make more sense when we actually go into it. So the first thing I want to do is, regardless of where we are, I want to make sure that the play button is always in the off position, in this off one, when we first start off. So that's what I'm going to do here. So play _off dot image. So let me also point that out, that a variable created as an image has an image variable somewhere right here, which can then be set or retrieved. So that's what's going to allow us to take this one variable that we're always drawing and swap its image between these two. Which, excuse me, kind of leads into, okay, so how do we swap the image? So because we're using the bullet, we can use the collided with. So if the bullet collides with play, that image we're drawing, what we're going to do is we're going to swap, set the image of play to the play on image. So this is what's creating that swap. So when we first get into the game loop, we're going to automatically set it to false. It only gets set to on if the bullet's colliding with that particular button. All right, so let's see that in action. And there we go. So right now, let me see if I can put the code right next to it, just so you can make that connection between the code and the game. So notice right now it's blue. It's blue because of this line of code that is constantly trying to set the picture to the blue. But if the bullet collides with that particular image, it changes the image to the on image. And then when you take it off, on, off, on, off, on. All right, so I think now might be a nice time to integrate some sound. Let me make sure that my sound is on. Okay, so you can see here we have a sound file for the hover, and all we need to do at this point is let's do a hover _menu dot play. And hopefully you can see, I mean, as you develop games, you know, you slowly add things to it. You layer in certain pieces. So let's listen. There we go. So again, we may have to play around a little bit with the timing for the play, because notice there's a little bit delay. I have to actually kind of like wait before I can do it again. But I'll let you explore that on your own. So now let's actually make the play button work. So the play button requires us to actually click on it. So let's actually borrow this if statement, but we have to add to it. So if the bullet collided with play and mouse dot left click, then at this point we're doing the game dot over equals true. And this should get us to a point where we start the game. And let me just have the code there alongside. So here we go. Hear the ding. I'm going to click on this. And now I'm level 1, ready to play. And again, now that I've turned on the sound, you can hear the sound effects from level 1. And I'm not going to play level 2 out. All right, so now let's handle one of the other buttons. Let's handle the story button. So we'll do story.set image for the same idea. And we'll do, what was the other thing I was going to do? All right, so story off dot image. And let's do the same if statement. And I just realized we're going to need to add this. Because if you recall, I mean, we got away with it with the play button because it was the only button on the screen. And that might actually be the reason why the hover wasn't working as well as it was before. We're going to want to use a rectangle, a rectangular collision. And if you recall from earlier games, collided with takes two parameters. It's either circular collision or rectangular collision. Now, because the play buttons are more closely bordered with rectangles, it makes sense for us to do that. So let me do that for this one here too. But this is for the story. And let's change this to story. Let's change this to story as well. All right, let's just try this little piece. Let's see that the story button is also interactive. And then obviously at this point, you'll be able to do the how to play button on your own. All right, so there's the story. And you can hear, I mean, depending on which button, I don't know, I'm like guiding over the how to play just because I don't want to collide with it because we haven't coded anything with it. Okay, so now what we want to do is when we click on this particular button, we want to do something else. When we click on that button, so I'm going to use the similar technique here with the play. So notice there's a lot of repetition of basic concepts where instead of colliding with the play, we're going to collide with the story. But this time, we're not going to do a game.over. What we want to do is we want to make this particular image visible. So let me add that as well. So by default, we don't want this image to be visible. So we'll set this equal to false. And let's make sure that we draw that. So, and let's see, where should we draw it? Let's draw it on top of almost everything. Remember, the order in which you draw things will determine if something's covered by something else. So when that story pops up, we want it to cover up everything else. We'll leave the button here so that way you can have something to look at. And what we want to do here is we want to make that story text visible. So we'll say true there. All right, let's give that a try. And there we go. So, now we have our instructions, our storyline, and we have a little, oops, I know you got to, what's happening, I heard, is that we're colliding with the buttons that are underneath, which is okay. I mean, we'll accept that for right now. So we're going to press the spacebar to continue. So we currently don't have that program. So let's handle that one. And at this point, I'm going to close out everything. And let's do a simple if statement that says if keys pressed K underscore space. Again, we're not ending the game here. This is just a matter of we want to make that story go away. So we're going to set this back to false. All right, let's play that one out. All right, so we're here. We got our nice little storyline. We're going to hit the space bar. Brings us back to the main screen. I can bring it back up again. And I could take it away. I can hit play. Start playing the game. Okay. But I think the only last bit I want to do for the start screen, again, there are some additional things that need to be addressed, but I'll let you kind of, play around with it and figure it out. So we've had some music here. So let's do game dot play music, and let's see how the start screen feels with that background music, in addition to um, some sound effects. So I go here, click here, and read it up. Go here and start playing. And you can kind of hear that start screen music is still playing in level 2 as well. When you play music, it will continue playing regardless of where you are in your code. The only way to stop the music is to actually use stop music. All right, so let's go back to our presentation. Let's review what we've done. So in this video, we added a start screen and we made it interactive by manipulating which image is attached to a particular variable. We also used some familiar if statements that incorporated collided with in order to make certain things visible, as well as how to get out of the start screen to actually start playing the game. So hopefully you're excited about having developed Delta Fighter, and enjoy.